What's going on, everybody? Thank you so much for coming back to another video. And in today's video, we are finally talking about the film that started the franchise that would go on to become not only my favorite film franchise, but my favorite thing of all time, and that is Star Wars Episode 4: A New Hope. So yes, it is finally time to talk about George Lucas's original concept, the one that started it all, the one that would go on to become the franchise that has meant more to me than most things in life. I love Star Wars so much, and if you've been watching this channel for a while, you know that it is literally my favorite thing of all time. Not only my favorite film franchise, not only my favorite TV shows, not only my favorite books and comics, it's just something that means so much to me. So I'm incredibly excited to finally talk about the film that started it all for me. George Lucas's 1977 Star Wars, or now known as Episode 4: A New Hope. When it first came out, it was just known as Star Wars, and it's really crazy to see how much this franchise has grown based on this film alone. I feel like anytime a new project in Star Wars is started, a lot of times the creators will really go back to this film. They always talk about how influential this film is to their overall outlook on how they're going to introduce this new story in Star Wars. And it's just crazy to see how much George Lucas got right in this one movie. So if you have no idea about the production or kind of just the basic gist of how this movie came to be, George Lucas really fought to get this movie made, and a lot of studios shut him down. A lot of people just did not see his vision and did not think the film would be successful in any way, shape, or form. Eventually, he did get a studio to back him, and the movie was made. And it was made for a pretty moderate budget. When you go back and watch this film, there's a lot about it that you can see is a little dated in certain areas, and you can tell that they were working with their budget to make things as basic and plain as they possibly could. But it is incredible how much the film still holds up, and it's crazy how much iconography he created visually and it just on an overall level cinematically. This film changed the game for cinematics at the time and just big blockbusters as an overall. It really changed the game for storytelling and film as an overall. It's really crazy to see how many films have been inspired by this film and how many things we've gotten that are so similar to Star Wars, all thanks to this film. This film also introduces to some of the most iconic characters in all of cinematic history: Luke Skywalker, Darth Vader, Princess Leia, Han Solo, Chewbacca, Grand Moff Tarkin, and so many others. It is just so crazy to see how many characters were introduced in this film that would go on to become the most iconic characters of all time. These characters have been expanded upon in books and comics and so many other types of things, and it's just really crazy to see how perfectly they were set up in this film. And all of that praise really goes to George Lucas and the amazing cast. You have Harrison Ford, Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, David Prowse inside the Vader suit, James Earl Jones doing the voice of Vader, Peter Cushing. There's just so many incredible faces and actors in this film that would go on to become iconic characters and iconic actors, as well as just actors who are already in this film who are already big in their own right, like Peter Cushing. And it's just really crazy to just see how much this film still holds up, how much it's set up, and how much George Lucas, like I mentioned, got right in this one film. When you really think about it, so much of what we know Star Wars to be and what we feel Star Wars should be is because of this film. The music, the sound effects, the look, the feel, the vibe, everything about it is really all thanks to this one film. You could literally watch this one film and you have the tone and the setup for what Star Wars would be. And of course, we've gotten so many different things in Star Wars now, between the books, the comics, the films, and all these various things, video games, that have been able to do their own thing. But at the end of the day, it's really all based on the setup that George Lucas made in this film. And it's just crazy, not only what George Lucas was able to bring as far as making this movie, but also the people he collaborated with. It was the perfect culmination of talents to create this perfect film, in my opinion. Now, I do have negatives. There are things about it that are not perfect, and I definitely things that I can nitpick, especially this many years after its release. But just as far as what it's set up on its own for its time and really how the legacy has continued on, I think it's a damn near perfect film for what he was trying to go for, despite its flaws. I feel its flaws make it even better, in my opinion. Like I mentioned, this was the culmination of some of the greatest talents that George Lucas probably could have collaborated with to create Star Wars. You have Ben Burtt doing the sound effects, John Williams bringing us the score, which what would Star Wars even be without John Williams' score throughout these films, including the films that don't even have him attached to it? There are other composers who have just taken that John Williams sound and done their own thing and reprised his music from the other films. He really just set in stone what Star Wars should sound like as far as the music, and it's just crazy to think of what Star Wars would be without John Williams. This collaboration would go on to become one of the most beautiful cinematic collaborations of all time. You also have the beautiful artwork in this film done by Ralph McQuarrie that till this day is still referenced for new Star Wars projects. There are so many new things in each and every single film, the animated stuff, that always pulls from Ralph McQuarrie. If you're a diehard Star Wars fan and have watched the documentaries or the behind the scenes that come on any of the Blu-rays or any of that home release kind of stuff, you know that Ralph McQuarrie is always mentioned. They always talk about his artwork. They always go back and reference his artwork whenever they were creating new visuals and new artwork for new Star Wars stuff. And I just think when you watch this film, it just goes to show how the talents that were collaborating in this film truly loved what they were doing and came up with something beautiful and special. And I think that this film speaks for itself. As far as negatives go in this film, there are definitely some slower bits of the film, especially in the first act. I feel like there's definitely some elements that when I go back and rewatch it, I always think, oh, it's a little bit slower than I remember. But for the most part, a lot of it really holds up, and the pacing is really, really good. About the halfway point, once the things start really picking up, there really isn't a boring moment in the film. There are a few moments where some of the effects look a little dated, and some of just, again, the pacing feels a little dated. The film feels old at times, but for the most part, it really doesn't. And for the most part, it still looks and sounds and just is done so well. The performances in this film are still so solid, and you believe each and every one of these characters are real, and you believe this world, and that's the greatest thing about it. Like I mentioned, there are little flaws. There are things in each and every single Star Wars film that are flawed, but if you watch this film, there's little mistakes you can find in the background, things that were left in, and that's part of what I love about this film. It's not the perfection that makes Star Wars so amazing to me. It's the characters, the world, the story, the sound effects, the music, all of that culminates into this beautiful creation. And I always have loved the little flaws. Being able to sit back and have a laugh with friends about the little things you can pick at in Star Wars has always been one of my favorite things, and I think this film, being the first one and being one of the most beloved ones, is a perfect example of that for me. I think my only other negative would probably be the big fight at the end, or big fight I say, between Obi-Wan and Darth Vader. If you've seen this film, you know it's a great scene as far as the emotion there, especially if you've seen the other stuff, and I think that it's still a great scene performance-wise. But as far as the actual fight itself, specifically on Alec Guinness's part, it does come across very cheesy and dated when you go back and watch it in this point. I think every single time I watch it, I'll always wish that there was a little bit more to the action there, a little bit more to that lightsaber fight in dialogue and as far as the actual lightsaber combat itself. Because when you go to Empire and you go to Return of the Jedi, they definitely up the ante, and there's between the dialogue and the action itself, the actual lightsaber duel, there's a really great blend of great story and great action there. Whereas when you go and watch that fight between Alec Guinness and Vader, yeah, it's definitely a little bit dated. It's definitely a little bit, you know, slow paced and kind of a little boring at times. It's kind of funny to watch, but that goes back to what I was saying. It's stuff like that you can kind of nitpick. And when I see people watching the new Star Wars movies that are just tearing into it, it's okay not to like certain things of Star Wars. I think that's totally fine. But when people are just tearing into it, but they'll praise this movie to the end of time, I just think, you know, I think it's unfair, it's unbalanced mentality when this film has so many little flaws and so many little things that are dated, but you can still love it so, so much. And yeah, guys, I really don't have too much more to say about this film. This is the one that started it all. This film has so much going for it. It's such a great film to go back and revisit each and every time. And it's also such a great reminder that, you know, if you collaborate with the right people and just try to put all your time and energy and love into a project, you can create something as beautiful as this. So yeah, guys, that's gonna be my thoughts on Star Wars Episode 4, New Hope. I can't wait to continue doing these reviews. We're almost done with the Star Wars reviews, and I will be back to reviewing films of all kinds. I really appreciate all of you guys who've been watching this, the new subscribers, the old subscribers, the comments, the likes. I do appreciate each and every one of you guys. Thank you guys so, so much. Make sure you guys leave those comments down below. What do you think about this movie? Do you like this movie? Do you not like this movie? Where does this sit for you or rank for you in your Star Wars rankings? Yeah, guys, I appreciate each and every one of you again, and I will see all of you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.